Hello folks, welcome to the last part of the 2019 New Year and 2010 New Decade celebration. As you probably already know from the title of this video, this part will be covering the year 2019 and what I was doing during that year. We begin our journey of 2019 at Valley Crossing in Columbus, Ohio on January 14th. I was heading home from school on this day and decided to swing by Valley Crossing to see if there was any trains here. And indeed there was. In the distance, on the Irondo's Logan line, there was a CSX local coming towards the Diamond. But before they got here, an NS northbound coal train came rolling on through on the Columbus district. About an hour after the coal train rolled through, the CSX local then came up, but was stopped by the signal here. Dispatch was keeping him there to allow another NS train to roll on through. While waiting, an NS high rail truck then rolled up and also stopped just before the signals here as well. A little after they came to a stop here, an NS southbound intermodal train then came roaring on by. After the intermodal train rolled on by, dispatch decided to allow the CSX local to come across the Diamond. But as I was recording the local, I think I bumped my camera, resulting in this next shot. Oh well, at least it was still cool to see the caboose on the end. This trip was featured in my video, John's Trains Adventures, Season 2, Episode 25, January 2019 in South Columbus. We now move to Marion, Ohio on January 26. On this day, my friend Jake and I drove up here to the Marion Union Station to catch some trains here with the beautiful snow on the ground. Although this wasn't the first train we saw here, the first train we'll see is a CSX westbound autorack train as it comes across the Norfolk Southern's main line. After that train came on by, we then saw a CSX southbound local on the Columbus sub, which parallels the NS main. Later on in the day, we then caught a westbound CSX military train as it came across the NS and Columbus sub mains. also made this into John's Train Adventures Season 2, Episode 26, Blue and Yellow in Marion. After our visit to Marion, we then went back to Columbus, Ohio on March 2nd. On this day, a special train was coming through Columbus, Ohio on the Columbus subdivision. I was set up at the Greenlawn Avenue Bridge, which crosses the railroad and the Scioto River. To the average Joe, it was just any other train, but what made it special was its power. After seeing the train here, I then drove to the certified oil gas station at the corner of Parsons and Daring Avenue to see the train pull into Parsons Yard. BC Rail 4626 is a GE C40-8M built in 1993 for BC Rail. It's now owned by Canadian National. XCSX 7347 is a GE C40-8W, built in 1993, but as Conrail 6164. In recent years, 7374 was sold back to General Electric. As soon as the front of the train disappeared into Parsons Yard, I then took off because, well, this is not a good part of town to hang out for trains at. I then drove to Valley Crossing, where I then saw two NS trains waiting here. They weren't waiting for a CSX train, they were waiting for one of their own. Dispatch was having a high-priority northbound Autorack train run around this stopped NS northbound freight. We'll now proceed to March of 2019. From March 23rd to the 30th, my dad, brother, and I embarked on a large trip to the big state of Texas. During this trip, we visited many places, not only in the state of Texas, but also in other states as well, such as Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Sadly, we did so much that I won't be able to show you all of what we did during this trip in this one video alone, unless you want to be here for 4 or 5 hours, which I'm pretty sure you don't want to be. So I'll just cover the highlights of what we did during this trip. And hopefully in the future, I'll make videos covering this trip more in detail, hopefully. Although you know how my record is. We first go to March 26 on the island of Galveston, Texas. Galveston, in my opinion, is an island paradise, not only for regular people, but also for rail fans. Normally that kind of reputation is reserved for a fictional island off the coast of the United Kingdom, but in this case it is real, and you're about to see it. We first go to the Galveston Railroad Museum. The Galveston Railroad Museum is housed at the former Galveston Santa Fe Union Station and property located on the island. The museum houses a large collection of artifacts such as tools, models, and even a large collection of fine china from various railroads such as the Santa Fe, the Baltimore and Ohio, and the Pennsylvania Railroad, and plenty of others. Another note of interest at this museum is the restored plaza inside the old Santa Fe Union Station. There are also some cool things in here as well, such as these restored signals and signs along this wall, and some telephone booths where you can walk up and pick up the phone to listen to somebody talk about either the history of the railroad or the town itself. Once you're done exploring the plaza, you can then walk out to the platform and see the museum's large collection of locomotives and rolling stock here. The jewel in the crown, besides the large collection of fine china, is Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe 316 and 315, two beautifully restored EMD F7As. Ironically, these two engines never worked for the Santa Fe. 316 was built in 1953 for the Southern Pacific's Texas and New Mexico Railroad as 365, and 315 was also built in 1953 directly for the Southern Pacific as their 6443. Eventually, in 2011, both these engines were sold to the Galveston Railroad Museum and moved to Motive Power and Equipment Solutions in Greenville, South Carolina for refurbishment. Then, a year later in 2012, they emerged from the shops sporting their old Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe war bonnet paint scheme, worn by many of the F units that used to work for the Santa Fe long ago. As of today, these two locomotives are operational and on occasion have hit the main line for excursions, with the last one happening in 2018. The best part of our visit to the museum was when we started talking to the volunteers here. One thing led to another, and before we knew it, they invited us to go inside 316. We took the opportunity and got to go inside 316, not only to see the controls, but to see the beating heart of this beast. I gotta say, that was extremely cool. Normally, they don't offer that kind of thing to anyone visiting the museum, but since we told them we also volunteered at our own railway museum, the Ohio Railway Museum, they decided to let us in to take a little look. Besides the F units, there are other locomotives and unique rolling stock around here as well, which you can check out. Also, if you're visiting the museum on a Saturday, they offer a 15-minute train ride aboard Missouri Pacific 13895, a transfer caboose which is pulled by the museum's 80-ton switcher 1983. The train rides are from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. with an hour lunch break for the crew from 12 to 1 p.m. If you're ever visiting Galveston Island, I highly recommend visiting the museum. It is a great place to see trains from the past, and it's really cool to visit. They are located at 2602 Santa Fe Place, Galveston, Texas. They are open throughout the week, year-round, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can also visit their website at https://www.galvestonrrmuseum.org for more information there. Later on in the day, after our visit here, we then drove to the 77th Street crossing to see some more modern railroading. We are at the entrance of BNSF's Galveston Yard, which is the beginning of the Galveston subdivision, which runs from here to Temple, Texas. During the days of the old Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, and up into the 1990s, this was the end of the Santa Fe's main line to the Gulf. But after the BNSF merger and the UPSP buyout, the Union Pacific sold off the SP Sunset route from Iowa Junction to New Orleans, Louisiana, to BNSF, making New Orleans the end of today's BNSF's Gulf Main Line. Despite the acquisition, this line still sees a good chunk of rail traffic coming to Galveston, consisting of grain, ethanol, and general goods. After that BNSF freight got into the yard, we then noticed a crew readying another freight train to leave Galveston. After about 20 minutes of waiting, they then started to leave. As they were leaving, one of the crew members disembarked the locomotive in order to throw the mainline switch to get out of the yard. Unlike many other switches across the United States, this one is controlled by a wheel instead of a lever. Once the crew member was back on the train, they then took off. Since it was the end of the day and our hotel was on the mainland, we decided to chase this train off the island. As soon as it was gone, we then got onto Interstate 45. As we were crossing the bridge that connects the island to the mainland, I then got some pacing action of the train as it was crossing the causeway to get from the island to the mainland. As soon as we were at Virginia Point, which is on the other side of the causeway, we then pulled off and caught the train along Virginia Point Road. Unfortunately, this is all I caught of the train here. In my haste to get the video camera and the photographer camera out, I forgot to press record on my video camera, and when I went to stop recording on the train, so our chase began again, and we finally caught it one more time at the Harbor Drive overpass in Hitchcock, Texas. We'll now move to Corpus Christi, Texas, on March 28th. On this day, we are on Corpus Christi Bay, which leads out into the Gulf of Mexico, and on this bay is the USS Lexington, a World War II era aircraft carrier. The USS Lexington CV-16 is an Essex-class aircraft carrier which was launched on September 23, 1942. Originally, the Lexington was supposed to be named the USS Cabot, but when the original USS Lexington CV-2 was lost during the Battle of the Coral Sea, it was decided to rename the ship the USS Lexington. The Japanese called the Lexington the Ghost Ship due to the fact that they had sunk her already, and it was like seeing a ghost reappear in front of them. Of course, that was CV-2 that they sunk, but the name caught on with her crew, and due to the dark blue scheme she was wearing at the time, she was then given the nickname the Blue Ghost. Once she was commissioned into the United States Navy on February 17, 1943, she was then deployed to the Pacific Theater, where she saw extensive action. After World War II, she was then decommissioned on April 23, 1947, and was put into the mothball fleet. During that time, she was then given Essex-class SCB-27C and SCB-125 conversions, which meant she was now able to carry most modern jet fighters at that time. She was then recommissioned back into the Navy on August 15, 1955, due to the Cold War. She then stayed in the Navy, sailing across the world's oceans until 1969, when she was then designated as a training carrier. This meant that although she was still in the Navy, she was now only stationed between her home ports of Pensacola, Florida, and Corpus Christi, Texas, training both active duty and reserve naval aviators. She stayed in that line of duty until November 8, 1991. By then, the U.S. Navy decided to decommission the USS Lexington and write her off the books. She was then replaced by the USS Forstall, a Forstall-class carrier CV-59. Once she was off the Navy's active list of ships, she was then donated to the city of Corpus Christi on November 26, 1991, and by 1992, the ship was turned into a museum, and she has stayed here ever since. There are plenty of things to do on board the USS Lexington, and you can spend the entire day just exploring the ship. Trust me, this is a great place to visit if you're either a naval or ship fan, or anybody who's just interested in ships. They are located at 2914 North Shoreline Boulevard, Corpus Christi, Texas. They are open throughout the week, year-round, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can also visit their website at https://usslexington.com for more information there. Also, for all you World of Warship fans out there, you can also play World of Warships right on the USS Lexington. Rest in peace, all CV carrier players. After our big Texas trip, we now move to Effingham, Illinois on April 26, 2019. On this day, my mom, brother, and I were going to see Queen, the revival band, perform in Effingham, Illinois. Once we were in Effingham, Illinois, we realized we had some time to crunch. I asked my mom and my brother if we could go down to the Amtrak Effingham passenger station to watch the Amtrak Saluka pull in and out of Effingham. They agreed, and we went down to the Amtrak station. Here at the station, the old Illinois Central Mid-America Main Line, now Canadian National, crosses over the old Pennsylvania Railroad's St. Louis line, now owned by CSX. The station here in Effingham, which is used by Amtrak, is the former Illinois Central passenger station, which also used to serve the Pennsylvania Railroad here. Around 7:10 p.m., here came the Saluka, being led by Amtrak 4615, one of Amtrak's new charger locomotives. As soon as the passenger train pulled in, they only stayed for 5 minutes before taking off, bound for Chicago, Illinois. There's been a lot said about the new Charger engines, but in my opinion, I think they're nice engines. I do like the streamlined versions run by Brightline a bit more, but they're cool to me. Granted, it's sad that they're going to be replacing my favorite modern locomotive, the Genesis series, by the end of 2020, but in my opinion, they are good engines. Now remember folks, it's just my opinion, so if you find it you disagree with me about the Chargers, let's keep it civil down in the comments section. Anyway, after our concert, we then went to French Lick, Indiana the next day on April 27th. On this day, we visited the French Lick Scenic Railroad, which runs from here in French Lick to Cuzo, Indiana, and return. The railroad has a nice collection of passenger cars and rolling stock here, and heading up the train today was French Lick Scenic Railway 465 in a Northern Pacific inspired paint scheme. Running right past the French Lick Depot is the French Lick Resorts, French Lick and West Bennett trolley line, which runs from the French Lick Resort to the West Bennett Springs Resort. Here we saw FL and WB number 1 as it ran through here. As it continued on towards the West Bennett Springs Resort, we'll now move back to Columbus, Ohio on May 1st, 2019. We're at the High Street Bridge, where we saw a CSX coal train being led by some very interesting power. GECX 2036 is a GE ET44AC GEVO demonstrator locomotive built in 2014. This engine was one of the first Tier 4 demonstrator engines made by General Electric. As of 2020, 2036 is still in its demonstrator scheme, but it is destined to be sold to the Canadian National and repainted and renumbered to 3125. As the train continued to roll on by, I then decided to drive to the West Muller Street crossing, where I was just able to catch it again. While I was here, I just so happened to met Mitchell Scott, another YouTube rail fan. He was also here to see GECX 2036. He posts a lot of interesting train videos on his YouTube channel, and since you're already watching my video here, I'm already assuming you're interested in trains as well. I mean, you're about 40 minutes into this video, so I highly recommend checking his channel out. It is really interesting. Link will be down in the description below so you can go check out his channel. He also posted a video of his catch of 2036 as well. I'll also leave a link down in the description box below so you can go check that out as well. After seeing this train, I then drove back to the High Street Bridge, where I then saw an NS freight train on NS's Warren branch. We'll now move to Worthington, Ohio on May 5th, 2019. On this day, we are at the Ohio Railway Museum's first day of 2019 operations. Since I was working here on this day, I was covering locomotive number 2, which was right next to good old 578 on this day. Operating on this day was Ohio Public Service number 64, ORM's interurban car. We'll now watch as 64 departs the yard with a load of passengers bound for Colonial Hills. After about 20 minutes, here came back number 64, finishing its run.
Yeah.
Before we leave, let's go to the south end of ORM's main yard to visit 703. 703, as I said in past videos, is Columbus, Ohio's last surviving streetcar left in existence. She was built in 1925 by the Coleman Car Company and ran all over the city here in Columbus, mainly on High Street. By 1964, Columbus had removed the entire trolley system, and 703 was in a scrapyard by that point. But luckily, that same year, 703 was saved by the Ohio Railway Museum and moved to their property. In 2018, ORM started a GoFundMe page to raise money to renovate 703 and put it back into operation. As of 2020, the GoFundMe page has raised $20,195, and the goal is to raise $25,000. We are very close to reaching our goal, and hopefully, in the near future during the 2020 season, there might be some things happening with 703. So if you wish to help put 703 back into operation, I'll leave a link down in the description box below so you can go check out the GoFundMe page for yourself and donate there. You can donate as much or as little money as you wish. Also, if you wish to visit ORM and see what's going on here, they are located at 990 Proprietors Road, Worthington, Ohio. They are not open right now, but they will be opening for the 2020 season on May 3rd. So mark your calendars. You can also visit their website at https://www.ohiorailwaymuseum.org for more information there. After our visit to ORM, we now go to Nelsonville, Ohio on June 8th. On this day, my dad, brother, and I were visiting the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway to see Hocking Valley number 3, as it not only ran the regular runs, but also did the special Wild West train later that afternoon.
Start recording.
We begin at the Nelsonville Depot and watch as number 3 pulls into the station with the first train of the day. Once the train was at the depot, the passengers began to board. Number 3 is a Baldwin-built 060 tender engine built in 1920. It spent most of its life working at a power plant in West Virginia until 1969 when it was retired. Eventually, it was donated to the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway, and by 2018, number 3 was back in operation. For the sake of this video, we'll just focus on the first run of the day, the Haydenville Run. The Haydenville Run, as the name implies, runs from the depot here to Haydenville, Ohio and return, and is the shortest run offered by the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway. Normally on the return journey, the train passes the depot and continues on to Hocking College's historic village. But during the time of our visit, the Hocking Valley was rebuilding the tracks down there at the time. So, the trains had to terminate at the Nelsonville Depot. As of 2020, the tracks at Hocking College is now back in service. Soon it was time for the train to depart, and we now watch as number 3 pulls out bound for Haydenville. After the train pulled out, we then gave chase and saw it 2 times along Road 278 just west of Nelsonville. A little later, after the train arrived in Haydenville, we then caught the train at the Hocking Canal Lock number 19 along Haydenville Road. Once the train passed by, we then drove back to the Nelsonville depot and watched as number 3 pulled back in, finishing its first run of the day. Trust me, the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway is a great place to visit. And with a variety of options offered by the Scenic Railway, there's a lot of things a person can do here. So, if you want to come down here and see the Hocking Valley Scenic Railway or number 3 for yourself, they are located at 33 East Canal Street, Nelsonville, Ohio. You can also check out their website at https://www.hvsry.org for more information about the train rides they offer by the Hocking Valley here. Also, to the volunteers of the Hocking Valley that we talked to here on this trip, I'm sorry I hadn't been able to get this video out. A lot of things kind of got in the way and I hadn't been able to really focus on it. But hopefully once the New Year's videos are done, I'll go straight into this video. And hopefully have it out for you guys. After our visit to Ohio, we now move just south of Boone, North Carolina on June 21st. On this day, my mom, brother, and I were on a trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and along the way, we made some stops. We first visit the famed Tweetsie Railroad in western North Carolina. The Tweetsie Railroad is a Wild West-themed amusement park, with the main attraction being the locomotive Tweetsie No. 12, which was running on this day. As a side note, the railroad is a narrow-gauge railroad, with the rails only being 3 feet apart, or 36 inches, so this was our first time seeing narrow gauge as well. Tweetsie Railroad No. 12, the mascot of the park, is a Baldwin-built 460 built in 1917 for the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad. The ET and WNC was a narrow-gauge short-line railroad that ran from Johnson City, Tennessee to Boone, North Carolina, and No. 12 was one of 5 460s built for the railroad. No. 12 worked for the ET and WNC until 1952, when the engine was sold off to the Shenandoah Central Railroad in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Then, 3 years later, No. 12 was then sold again to the Tweetsie Railroad and has been here ever since in operation. Sadly, the other 4 460s built for the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad were scrapped, and No. 12 is the only surviving locomotive left from that railroad. Although we did ride the train twice during our visit, we'll just stay on the ground and watch as the train comes in and out of the Main Street station here at the entrance of the park. Normally, when the train's just getting ready to depart, the crew starts ringing the bell to let everyone know that the train is getting ready to move. And once they're ready, they'll sound the whistle off and then take off. Just a short walk southwest of the entrance to the park is the impressive Dead Horse Trestle, crossing over this small runoff. Unfortunately, there was little to no information on this bridge, so as far as I was able to research, it was more than likely built in 1958. The bridge itself is a wooden structure built to resemble the bridges typically seen on American railroads during the mid to late 1800s, especially ones made out west at the time. Interestingly, the name of the bridge is more than likely inspired by Dead Horse Gulch, another trestle bridge built for the White Pass and Yukon Railroad in Alaska. That's another narrow gauge operation. We now watch as No. 12 pulls its train across the trestle with a happy load of passengers. And to finish our visit to the Tweetsie Railroad, we'll now go back to the main park and watch as number 12 pulls back into the Main Street station, passing the engine shops. Here is where the railroad stores and maintains its locomotives and rolling stock. I also got this impressive shot of number 12 running over my GoPro. Please note as a disclaimer, I don't quite know if the railroad appreciates people putting cameras on the tracks, so if you're visiting the park and you just so happen to see this video, I highly recommend not doing what I did. I don't want people getting in trouble because of my actions. The Tweetsie Railroad is a fantastic family-friendly amusement park to visit and offers a variety of things to do. So, if you wish to come and spend the day here like we did, they are located at 300 Tweetsie Railroad Lane, Bowling Rocks, North Carolina. You can also visit their website at https://tweetsie.com for more information on the Tweetsie there. After our visit to the Tweetsie Railroad, we then moved to Spencer, North Carolina the next day. Spencer is home to the North Carolina Transportation Museum, which is housed in the former Southern Railway locomotive shops. On the day we visited, they were doing the 2019 Fire Truck Festival. As part of the festivities, a load of fire trucks from all makes and models and even different times gathered here to be on display. As a matter of fact, this was the largest gathering of fire trucks in the state of North Carolina. Usually during this event, Norfolk Southern also likes to come here and help celebrate, usually sending Norfolk Southern 911 to visit. But for the first time, CSX also decided to come and help by bringing their own 2 locomotives to the festival for the first time. The first one we saw was CSX 1776, Spirit of Our Armed Forces. Looking dead on at the engine, it just looks like any other CSX locomotive, but when you look at the sides, that's when the difference is really noticeable. 1776 is a General Electric ES44AC built in 2013 as 3112. When 3112 was built, it was put in the regular dark blue and yellow stripe scheme. Then, in early 2019, 3112 was then taken to the Huntington Locomotive Shops in Huntington, West Virginia, where it was repainted and renumbered to 1776. The paint scheme on the locomotive combines the blue and yellow of CSX with the gray military camouflage worn by U.S. Armed Forces. As we were looking at 1776, the engine then took off. Besides 1776, CSX 911 was also here as well, right next to NS 911 at the Roundhouse. CSX 911 is a GE ES44ACH built in 2008. Interestingly, the engine was given the number 911 when it was first built, but CSX didn't do anything special with it, only giving it the same treatment as all the other locomotives in the fleet. The engine didn't even get a Spirit name. Then, in early 2019, CSX took 911 to the Huntington locomotive shops and gave the engine its current paint scheme. 1776, 911, and a third engine that wasn't here at this event, 3194, were painted by CSX as part of their Pride in Service program. Their Pride in Service program is a way CSX demonstrates its commitment to honor and serve veterans, active military personnel, and first responders. Later on during the day, both 911s were put together and also ran around the property.
Ouch.
And to finish our visit to NCTM, we then returned back to the Roundhouse that afternoon. By that time, all the fire trucks, both 911s, and 1776 had gathered here for a giant group photo and horn-off. As of 2020, CSX 1776, 911, and 3194 are all being stored in Waycross, Georgia. I do hope they come back out and pull trains again still wearing their colors. As for NS 911, it still can be seen on the main lines hauling trains across the Norfolk Southern system. Also, as a side note, Norfolk and Western 611 is currently being housed here for winter storage, but it is expected that the big steam engine will be fired up for operations here at the museum later this year. The North Carolina Transportation Museum is an absolute treat to visit, and it's definitely a must-see for any rail fan or vacationer who might be visiting North Carolina. If you wish to visit NCTM, they are located at 1st Samuel Spencer Drive, Spencer, North Carolina. They are open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesdays through Saturdays and 12 to 5 p.m. Sundays. You can also visit their website at https://www.nctrains.org for more information about upcoming events and news about the museum there. After our trip to the Carolinas, my dad, brother, and I then went on a short trip to visit a friend of ours in Michigan. On our way up, along what I call the Raceway, we stopped at the Sutter Avenue Railroad crossing just south of Erie, Michigan, where we caught a southbound NS coal train. The Raceway, as I call it, is a set of 3 main lines that parallel each other along the shore of Lake Erie. The first 2 main lines, Norfolk Southern's Detroit Line and Canadian National's Shoreline Subdivision, run parallel of each other from Toledo, Ohio to Detroit, Michigan. And the third main line, CSX's Toledo Terminal Subdivision, also runs alongside the NS and CN from Toledo, Ohio to Monroe, Michigan, although their line is a little further west from the CN and NS. Later on in the afternoon, just before dark, in Monroe, Michigan, we then caught a northbound NS freight as it came across the Raisin River. We caught it from the North Dixie Highway Bridge, and this train had some very interesting power on it. the train was BNSF 6299, 9611, and City Rail 1210. BNSF 6299 and City Rail 1210 are both GE ES44ACs, but what caught my attention was BNSF 9611 and EMD SD70 MAC. 9611 was built in 1995 for BNSF's predecessor, the Burlington Northern. Unlike the other BN engines on the railroad, which were the standard Cascade Green and Black, 9611, along with many of its siblings, were painted in the BN's executive paint scheme. Once the BNSF merger happened, many of the BN's executive locomotives got patched to have BNSF's logo on them instead. As of 2020, many of BNSF's former BN SD70 Macs, including 9611, still wear their executive paint scheme and are still running on the main lines. And to finish this trip, we now move to the next day, where we find ourselves in Holland, Ohio, a suburb east of Toledo, Ohio. Here we caught Amtrak's Lakeshore Limited on the famed former New York Central's water level route as it passed the South Holland-Sylvania Road railroad crossing east of town. Before we move on to the next trip, there's something I must address. In 2019, the United States celebrated the 150th anniversary of the first transcontinental railroad. This was perhaps the biggest event of the entire decade, with many people not only in the United States, but from the entire world coming to celebrate. And to help celebrate it, Union Pacific announced back in 2014 that they were going to be taking UP Big Boy 4014 back to Cheyenne, Wyoming for restoration, and in early 2019, the restoration was completed. For the first time ever since 1959, the world's largest steam locomotive, the Big Boy, had returned to the rails. Before 2014, seeing something like this return to the rails was thought to be an impossibility by many in the rail fanning community. But once the restoration was completed, that impossibility became reality. After doing some test runs out of Cheyenne, Wyoming, 4014, along with Union Pacific 844, embarked on the Great Race to Ogden, where 4014 and 844 traveled from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Ogden, Utah and returned from May 4th to May 19th. As part of the celebration of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 9th, the Union Pacific did their own version of the Golden Spike ceremony, with Union Pacific 844 and 4014 doing the honors. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to this event, but from July 13th to the 19th, my dad, brother, and I then embarked on the biggest train chase we have ever done. From July 8th to the 31st, Union Pacific 4014 embarked on the Great Race across the Midwest. And as part of this run, we chased Union Pacific 4014 from Omaha, Nebraska, all the way to the Twin Cities. For the sake of the video, I'll just be showing some of the best shots I got from the first run, from Omaha, Nebraska to Boone, Iowa. We begin our chase of 4014 on July 15th, just north of Council Bluffs, Iowa. We are at the Musical Hill Lane crossing on the former Chicago Northwestern main line. Here is where the main line went from a double track to a single track, and there were some old Chicago Northwestern color light signals still protecting this end of the siding. After some time waiting, we soon heard the rumble of 4014 in the distance, and soon enough, here she came. Thank you. Oh, here comes. After seeing the big boy here, we then later caught the train again, at speed, at the Avery Avenue Railroad crossing in the small town of Maple River, Iowa. Another place we saw the train was near D Avenue Railroad crossing, just west of Scranton, Iowa. Here, we got an interesting perspective shot of the big boy as it ran across the rolling prairies of Iowa. Although the engine is the biggest steam locomotive in operation, from here, 4014 looked quite small. Union Pacific 4014 is owned by the Union Pacific Railroad and is operated under their steam program. As of 2020, 4014, along with 844, are currently back in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but hopefully both engines will be running for the 2020 season. So, if you wish to know when the next excursion will happen for both these engines, you can go to https://www.up.com/heritage/steam for more information on upcoming excursions there. Also, special thanks to Jacob Roll for letting me use his footage from the Great Race to Ogden. He also has a YouTube channel here and posts a lot of videos of trains he's caught, and I highly recommend checking it out. I'll leave a link down in the description box below so you can go check his channel out as well. After our big chase of 4014, we now return to Ohio for some more smaller steam action, this time on the Lebanon, Mason, and Monroe Railroad. The date is now August 10th, and on this day, my brother and I, along with some of our ORM friends, had come down here to Lebanon, Ohio to see Lehigh Valley Coal Company 126 return to the LM&M. Since I've already covered this engine in past New Year's videos, I won't go into detail here. Now let's watch as 126 pulls its train across the Lebanon, Mason, and Monroe Railroad. We first see 126 at the Cincinnati Avenue US 42 Railroad crossing on its return journey back to Lebanon, Ohio.
Okay.
After seeing the train there, we next see the train at the Nargel Drive Railroad crossing. Located next to the line here is Creech's Garden Center and Landscaping Company. The company has a rail connection here, and the LM&M likes to store its equipment here, such as Chesapeake and Ohio 5704.
Queen Mary.
And for our final catch, we see the train at the South Sycamore Street Railroad crossing in Lebanon, Ohio. Here, the LM&M has a small yard here, where on this day, Nickel Plate Road 901 and some coaches were being stored. The Lebanon Mason and Monroe Railroad is a great place to visit even without steam, and I highly recommend taking a visit. The railroad is located at 16E South Street, Lebanon, Ohio. You can also visit their website at https://lebanonrailroad.com for more information there about regular trips and upcoming events. After our visit to the Lebanon Mason and Monroe Railroad, we now make a short visit to Bellevue at the Mad River and Nickel Plate Railroad Museum. The date is now August 24th, and on this day, my brother and I were meeting some friends up here to visit the Mad River and Nickel Plate Railroad Museum. Just recently, the museum had acquired a new piece of equipment, former Nickel Plate Road 757. Nickel Plate Road 757 is a Lima-built S2 284 Berkshire built in 1944. The engine worked for the Nickel Plate Road until 1958, when 757 and many of its sister engines were retired. Originally, 757 was supposed to be donated to the city of Bellevue, but at the time, the city was unable to give the engine an adequate display site. So the engine stayed in storage at the Bellevue Roundhouse, and by 1966, the Nickel Plate Road's predecessor, the Norfolk and Western Railroad, donated the Berk to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg. The Berk stayed there on display for many years. Then, in 2017, it was announced by the Mad River and Nickel Plate Road Railroad Museum their intentions on bringing back 757 to Bellevue. Then, finally, in early 2019, 757 was finally moved back to Bellevue, and now she sits here on display. The day we visited the museum was a very interesting one, because when we got there, they were moving the big Burke around. We now watch as Nickel Plate Road 757 is pushed to the end of the siding. The Mad River and Nickel Plate Railroad Museum is a great place to visit. If you wish to come and see 757 or any of the other pieces of equipment here at the museum, they are located at 253 Southwest Street, Bellevue, Ohio. They are open throughout the week from 12 to 4 p.m. You can also visit their website at https://www.madrivermuseum.org for more information there. We now move to the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad on September 28th to see another Nickel Plate Road Berkshire in action. On this day, my brother and I had came up here to see famed Nickel Plate Road 765 as it pulls the annual Steam in the Valley trips. The first place we saw the train was at the Breaksville station south of Cleveland, Ohio. Just north of the station is the Breaksville Northfield Bridge, which crosses Route 82 over the Cuyahoga River. We are on Station Road Bridge and now watch as famed Nickel Plate Road 765 pulls the train south underneath the bridge. Later on in the day, we then saw 765 and its train on the old abandoned section of Riverview Road, just northwest of the Alexander Road overpass. We had to walk almost half a mile to get to this spot, and as soon as the front of the train passed, we ran it. In past years of Steam in the Valley, the photo run-by location happened in Boston Mills, but in 2019, there was major construction work happening there, so the photo run-by location was moved to Indigo Lake. Late that afternoon, the best part of our trip occurred when we got to see Nickel Plate Road 765 pass us just after dark, with the Mars light in full view. The Steam in the Valley trips are always a treat to ride. If you wish to ride the Steam in the Valley trips, or any other trips offered by the Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, you can go to their website at https://www.cvsr.org for more information there. Nickel Plate Road 765 is owned and operated by the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society, and besides the Steam in the Valley runs, they also do other excursions and even other events across the Midwest. So, if you wish to see Nickel Plate Road 765, they are based out of 15808 Edgerton Road, New Haven, Indiana. The facilities are open to the public on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Sundays from 12 to 4 p.m. You can also visit their website at https://fortwaynerailroad.org for more information about their upcoming events and excursions there. After our night photo run, we now move to Leipsic, Ohio on October 12th. On this day, the Ohio Rail Experience was running for the first time the North End Run. This excursion ran from Leipsic, Ohio to just south of Dundee, Michigan, making this the first run out of state. Another reason why we were here was because of Clinchfield 800. For the entire 2019 fall season, Clinchfield 800 from the Southern Appalachia Railroad Museum was on loan to ORE to help power these excursions. Normally, ORE excursions are operated with 2 locomotives, and this train was no exception, with Nickel Plate Road 901 on the rear of this train. We begin our chase of this special train at the old DT&I and Nickel Plate Road Diamond on the northwest side of town. Today, this diamond is now where the Indiana and Ohio Railroad crosses the Norfolk Southern here. Another place we saw the train was in the small town of Hamler, Ohio. Here is where the old DT&I, now the I&O, crosses the old B&O main line to Chicago, now CSX. And to finish our little visit, we next see the train one more time at the East Mulberry Road Railroad crossing just north of Metamora, Ohio, across the border in Michigan. As I said in previous videos, the Ohio Rail Experience is a great train ride to ride, and I highly recommend riding any of the excursion trains offered by the ORE. If you wish to ride any of the excursions offered by them, you can go visit their website at https://www.ohiorailexperience.com for more information there. After seeing Clinchfield 800, we now move to the Ohio Railway Museum in Worthington, Ohio on October 24th. Although the museum wasn't open on this day, there was a truck crane parked in the parking lot. The reason why this crane was here came in the next day from Cleveland. On October 25th, ORM had acquired former CSX 16607, also known as the Love Shack. The Love Shack is a transfer caboose originally built for the Louisville and Nashville Railroad as 6607. It stayed on the Louisville and Nashville up into CSX days, and in late 2019, ORM managed to acquire 16607 from CSX. After getting the caboose put back together at Potter Street, we then watch as Roger pushes the caboose back to the main yard.
6607, double ball, main yard, traffic clear.
16607 entering the main yard in reverse for the first time with 16607.
I'd not be able to go back as far as I wanted to in looking at the pole, but let me know when I'm about 20 feet away if I get too close.
16607 for open copies. Ladies and gentlemen of the Ohio Railway Museum, the Love Shack is home.
Of course, this wasn't the only thing to happen at the Ohio Railway Museum. Throughout mid to late 2019, our friend Logan, who volunteers here, was restoring this speeder back to operation. The date is now November 29th, and on this day, we were here to pull out the speeder for the first time and try to run it. This speeder is a Kalamazoo Railway Supply Company 216-L speeder built sometime between 1930 and 1950. When the speeder arrived at ORM, it stayed in storage for a long time, until now. Well, dealing with equipment that's around 70 to 90 years old, and one that hasn't been probably started since the 1980s, is bound to have some teething troubles. But, after getting it warmed up, Blaze, as we call it, was finally once again up and running.
There's a bell on that thing? Take her down the main line, stand! Good luck. It's rolling. Oh, and it died.
Now it was a game of learning how to drive the thing without stalling the engine. Eventually, Logan got the hang of it, and before we knew it, we were taking rides on it.
Oh, she's moving! Wonderful machine!
As of 2020, there are plans in the works at ORM for both Blaze and the Love Shack to be in operation here at the museum. So, if you wish to come and ride Blaze, the Love Shack, or any other pieces of equipment here at the Ohio Railway Museum, they're located at 990 Proprietors Road, Worthington, Ohio. And, as I said earlier, they are currently closed right now, but they will be reopening the museum in May. You can also visit their website at http://www.ohiorailwaymuseum.org for more information there. And, for our last major event of 2019, we now go to the Panhandle of Virginia on November 23rd. On this day, my dad, brother, and I were here to see the annual CSX Santa train. For the 77th running of this special train, CSX has let Clinchfield 100, the former business car of the railroad, come down here to ride the train once more. We begin our chase of this famed train at the south portal entrance of the Sandy Ridge Tunnel, just northwest of Daint, Virginia. The next place we saw the train was at Granny Branch, along Road 63. And for our last great place we saw this train, we caught it at the Copper Creek Viaduct from a new angle just off of Highway 58. To go and see this fantastic train, they always run the week before Thanksgiving, which means for the 2020 run, they won't be running until November 21st, so mark your calendars. Also, I covered this entire trip in my video, the 77th CSX Santa train, Clinchfield on the rear. So, if you wish to go and see what I covered during this trip, I'll leave a link down in the description box below so you can go check out my video. So now we have reached the end of 2019 and the end of the entire decade. But before we finish this entire 6-part Odyssey, there is one more thing I wish to show you guys. Back in part 1, I showed you this small switcher on the Camp Chase Railroad in Lily Chapel, Ohio. In that video, I said I had no idea what happened to the locomotive, but now I do. On January 7th, 2020, 10 years after I shot that video, I had returned to Lily Chapel, Ohio. Although the grain facility was still here, the tracks here looked pretty worse for wear, but I do believe the railroad still comes down here to store its equipment here. And just off the tracks, right next to it, was that little yellow switcher. Turns out it has been here all this time. I don't know if the railroad or the grain facility still uses it, but I'm thinking they still might. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, turns out it's been here all this time. And now we have officially reached the end of the 2010 Odyssey. And now let's end this on a good note. Hit it, boys! Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray right through the very heart of it. New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep and find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. These little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you. New York, New York. New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city that never sleeps and find I'm a number one, top of the list, king of the hill, a number one. town blues are melting away. I'm gonna make a brand new start of it in old New York. And if I can make it there, I'm gonna make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York, New York. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed my little singing bit right there. I hope you enjoyed this entire 6-part Odyssey. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff happening, hopefully in the 2020 decade, and I'll be seeing it down the road. See you later.